So you have learned how to consume APIs using the requests module. However, not every website has an API for us to work with. So in situations like that, the only way to get the data we want is to parse the HTML behind a web page, get rid of all the HTML tags, and extract the actual data. This technique is called web scraping. So we scrape all the HTML tags and get the actual data that we want. And that's what I'm going to show you in this tutorial. So we're going to write a program that will extract the list of newest questions on StackOverflow.com. We refer to this kind of program as a web crawler or a web spider. So let me show you how to build a web crawler in Python. So here in a new project, first we need to install Beautiful Soup version 4. This is a very popular Python package for extracting information from HTML and XML files. So let's go ahead. Beautiful. We also need to install the requests module to download the web page that contains the newest questions on Stack Overflow. So pip env install requests. All right, now let's add a new file here, app.py. First, let's change our virtual environment. So I'm going to set that to PyCrawler virtual environment. Let's install PyLint. So the first step is to download the web page that contains the newest questions. Let's import the requests module, and then we call get and pass https stackoverflow.com/questions. Now we get the response and store it here. This response object, as you have seen before, has an attribute called text, and this returns the HTML content of this web page. So using this HTML content, we can create a beautiful soup. Let me show you. So from BS4, let's import the beautiful soup class. Now here we create a beautiful soup object and pass our HTML content. Now here we can get the HTML content from a web page on the internet, but we can also read the content of an HTML file on disk. Beautiful soup doesn't care. As long as we give it a string that contains some HTML or XML content, it's happy. Now, as a second argument, we need to pass the type of parser. Because we're going to parse an HTML file, we should pass html.parser. And with this, we get a soup object. Now, this soup object mirrors the structure of our HTML document, so we can easily navigate this document and find various elements. Now, back here, let's right-click on the first question and inspect it. So here's the structure of our document. Here we have an anchor that contains the title of our question. Now let me expand these elements here. So we have this div with the ID questions, and this is the container for all our questions. Let's look at one of these questions. That's a div with the class question-summary. Inside of this div, we have two other divs, one with the class stats container that includes the number of votes and answers, and another div with the class summary that contains the title and summary of our question. So using our soup object, we need to find all elements with the class question-summary. That's pretty easy. So soup has a method called select that takes a CSS selector. If you're not familiar with CSS selectors, you really need to learn that on your own because that's beyond the scope of a Python course. But basically, a CSS selector is a string that helps us find an element in an HTML document. So here we want to get all elements with the class question-summary. We type dot to specify a class, and then the name of the class, question-summary. This will return a list. Let's store that here. Each item in this list is an instance of the tag class. Let me show you. So I'm going to print the type of the first question, questions of 0. Let's save the changes, run the program. We get this error, no module named BS4, because CodeRunner is using the wrong Python interpreter. I showed you how to fix this issue earlier, so I'm not going to repeat that here. Instead, I'm going to run this program using the terminal. So python3 app.py. So each object in this list is an instance of the tag class. In this case, this tag object represents this div here, the first question. Now, as you see, this element has a couple of attributes, class and ID. These attributes are stored in a dictionary in our tag object. Let me show you. So I'm going to print questions of 0.attributes. Save the changes. Let's run it one more time. So here we have a dictionary with two key value pairs. There's the first one, class, and here's the second one. Now we can easily read these attributes using square brackets. So we don't have to access the attributes dictionary. We can simply use square brackets here to get the value of the ID attribute. Now, if this element doesn't have this attribute, we're going to get an exception. So a safer way is to call the get method. Get ID, and we can optionally supply a default value. So this is all about the attributes. Now we need to get the title for each question. So back to our HTML document. Here's our question summary. Inside this div, we have this div with the class summary. Let's expand that. We have an H3 with an anchor that contains the title of our question. Now look at the class attribute here. The class of this element is question-hyperlink. So back to our code, this tag object also has this select method like the soup object. And here we can pass another CSS selector. In this case, question-hyperlink. Let's save the changes. Run the program again. This returns a list of objects. You can see the first object here is our anchor. Now, in this particular case, we know that each question has one title. So we don't need a list here. We have another method called select1 that returns one object instead of a list. And this is more efficient in situations where we know we're dealing with a single element. So we don't waste time searching the entire document for more items. So save the changes. Let's run this one more time. Now we have one anchor. So the next step is to get the actual text here. This is the title of our question. This tag object has a method called getText. Let's try this. So back to the terminal, let's run the program. And here's the title of our first question. So next we need to iterate over all the questions and get the title of each. So for question in questions, let's print question.select1 and then get text. Save the changes, run the program one more time. Here are all the questions, beautiful. The last step is to get the votes for each question. So back to our HTML document. As I told you before, each question summary has a div with the class stats container. Here we have another child, a div with the class stats. And we've got the votes right here. So we have a span with the class vote count post. So similarly, we print question.select1. The name of the class is vote count post. And once again, we call getText to get the text inside of this span element. Save the changes, run the program one more time, and we successfully got all the newest questions and their vote on the first page. Now, to get the questions on page 2 and onwards, we need to follow the same approach. So first, we need to find the pagination component on this page. Here we can find the last page. So we extract that here and then run this logic inside of a loop. In this loop, in each iteration, we'll get the questions for a specific page.